For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Sure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's Tuesday practice. That's really a Wednesday practice because USC faces Wazoo on Friday. And yesterday, we said it was a good practice. I think it was another good practice today. But again, no full pads. That's something we talked about yesterday. But Dan, how do you thread the needle when you have a short week like USC does, where you're physical, but you're not overworking the players?
Yeah, I think that's really a hard call to make. And, if you're trying to make 1 point, you could, come out here and in full pads, and you could be wrong. I mean, it's when you have 2 straight weeks on the road, you're 2 time zones away, you get in here really late Sunday morning, and you're back at it on Monday and Tuesday, and you've got a Friday game. I think it's kind of a compromise. This is a team that doesn't always relish practicing in full pads. I mean, you could say we're going to make a point that this is a physical game, but that's not something USC ever does. Make that point about the physicality. I mean, I think you can be physical if you play fast and if you play competitively, and you run every play out, and you come out of your stances if you're an offensive lineman, or you really work with your hands and your feet if you're a defensive lineman, and you run crisp patterns, and you do all those things, you can have a really physical, challenging, competitive practice and not be in full pads.
Yeah.
What you don't get is a chance to maybe address the tackling issues. And I'm sorry, but that 235-pound, Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback, should not have been able to run free the way he did. There were too many, grabs and misses, and he wasn't the kind of athlete that ought to be able to do that to you. So that might be something you'd really want to address this week, but you can't really do that. So we'll see how it works out, against a pretty good offense this Friday.
Yeah, in that sense, how would you evaluate this week's practice? Do you think it was fast and competitive?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think they've been, again, it's as fast and competitive as it can be when you're not in full pads. And you can say, man, the running backs are running hard, and they're kind of running through people. But the other part of that is they're not really being tackled.
Yeah.
And they're not, people are grabbing at them. But I mean, you can, evaluate what you're seeing them do, but you can't always evaluate the results because, although I think one of the things I like this week is they're working really hard to get the scout team, especially the scout defense, involved. And I think that was Tim Drevno spent a lot of time really, really working them hard. And, yesterday you had, I guess it was Elijah Winston. Today, Juliana Felenica, they were mad and they were taking swings, and they were, and that's probably a really good thing. So I think the scout team has given them a pretty good look. When they finished up 11 on 11, they had a scout team that had a lot of pretty good athletes on it, with Jack Sears as quarterback and Marquise Stepp as a running back, and they were coming after the first defense. So I think those are good things. I think that the scout team this week was much more involved in trying to do whatever they were going to do, and moving the linemen and doing all the things that Washington State does. And so I think from that perspective, so far so good.
Yeah. It was a defensive day, so you got to talk to defensive coordinator Clancy Pendergrass. How does he plan to approach Brandon Minshew and the Wazoo offense?
Well, they've got to do a better job staying in their lanes, and it hurt them, with the pass rush, because Sam Ehlinger very often was looking to pass, and they had stopped the receivers, and he just take off, and he's like a linebacker, a 235-pound lumbering sort of a guy, and he's just running by people because of that they had left too big of gaps, or they just didn't, get him on the ground, with their tackling. So I think they got to, start with just being really, really sound in what they're doing. And, these guys throw the ball so much, and they get you in that kind of, you're either trying to get to the quarterback or hoping your guys hold, the wide receivers up, and yet I guess their second leading receiver is a running back. So they really do a good job of releasing that running back out of the backfield, and this guy gets rid of the ball really quickly. We'll see if they've got a pass rush that can get to him. They're not going to have an offensive line similar to Stanford or Texas, but the guy, he's a grad student. He's made the right call moving from East Carolina to. That's a heck of a move when you think East Carolina to Washington State. I mean, I don't know if you can get there from here, but he's a perfect quarterback for Clancy said, as good as their series of quarterbacks have been in the last few years that we've seen, he thinks this kid's better than anyone they've had. So this is a challenge.
I said Brandon. It's Gardner. It's an interesting name that I messed up. But it was also a day to talk to special teams, and that was definitely an area of issue against Texas. You got to talk to not only John Baxter, but Reed Butteridge, and about how punting has been going this week.
He was really upbeat and really felt like that they have addressed it in terms of trying to clear their heads out and not be thinking too much and just go out there with very simple focus on their technique. But the second part of it is, instead of thinking about where the game is or what your situation is, you think about something like, how do I help our guys out here? How do I just do my job and get the job done for the rest of these guys? And he said it's worked like very well this week. I mean, they have punted the ball well. Considering how it was going, so they're pretty upbeat. They can't wait to play, so that's a good thing. As they've all worked on. If you're a kicker or a punter in college football, you have to have a short memory. You have to be able to forget what just happened, and so they think they've done a pretty good job. And I think Baxter was. I asked him. I said, this is what Reed said, and he said, well, that's good to hear. So. Baxter was, but he did have some of those things. I said, how do you, he says like a golf swing and you just lose it. And I said, the crazy thing though is both of your punters lost it at the same time. He said, yeah, go figure. I mean, that's like, he said, I can't tell you how that happened. And who can? I mean, that's like, you got a right-footed punter and left-footed punter, and they both lost it in the same game. That's really weird.
Yeah, it is indeed. But the punters are not the only ones upbeat this week. You and I have paid attention to the overall mood of the team, and especially Clay Helton. But all of them seem especially upbeat. You wouldn't be able to tell that this is a team that's 1-2.
No, they are not down in the dumps a bit. I mean, Clay said, they follow him, they watch him. The players have said we need him to be up and all of that. What exactly the players need? Do they need somebody up in their face that's grabbing them by the throat and yelling at them? I don't think we know that yet. But Clay is true to his commitment to be the upbeat, positive guy, and he's an upbeat, positive guy. And you really, really would have no indication. If you just came for this practice alone, didn't know anything else, you could not possibly guess this was a 1-2 team coming off 2 games where the fan base is really not happy.
Yeah. As far as this game goes, it's hard to believe that this practice week for us is over. It's a Tuesday and it's already gone. But it feels like this game against Wazoo is a turning point. Whether or not how the season goes, we can kind of get a sense from Friday's game.
Yeah, I don't think you can lose this game. I mean, Amon-Ra said yesterday, must win. And you haven't heard that much yet. But and they can win this game. They can win the South. They can win out. They can do all. Then they could go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, they could do a lot of things. If they lose this game, they cannot do any of those things. So, how big is this game? This game is really big. And USC cannot lose to Washington State at home at any time. Any Washington State team, any USC team. If that happens. And we were there for it happened once with Lane Kiffin, a 10-7 loss. Some of those things you never recover from as a coach or a group of players if you lose to Washington State at home. You just can't do it.
In that sense, how do you think this game will go? You didn't want to give a prediction last week. What does your gut feel this week? I
have more of an upbeat feeling about USC this week. I like the matchup a little better, although that didn't do them any good last year at all. They had offensive linemen injured, and they had no luck at all blocking that moving defensive front that Washington State put out there with a bunch of little guys. They don't have their best player from last year up front, but they've still got little guys still move around, and they have I mean, the thing about, they are better than the teams they've been playing, but they've got 10 sacks. They've only given up 2 sacks, so they've had a whole different situation in terms of how they've performed in certain, in the passing game, for example. They've protected well, and they've gotten to the quarterback. I think USC has to do both of those this week, and if they don't, they're in trouble. If they do, I think, JT and Amon-Ra and the rest of the pass receivers, I think they'll do pretty well. And if they throw the ball well, I think they'll be able to run the ball well. I don't know which way they're going to go. Are they going to throw it and then set up the run, or are they going to run it and try to set up the pass? But they've, I think they've got a chance. But so I'm a little more upbeat after seeing, last 2 weeks, the Tuesday, Wednesday practices, which was what essentially we've just gone through, were the kind of things that you just said. I don't like the looks of this at all, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
This week, I don't have that feeling. And the matchup is a different matchup. And it's home. It's a short week. I'm almost thinking a short week is a good week this week because you want to get back out there and show that you can do something. So I'm not looking at this early in the year, the short week as a real negative. But that's me. I think you always want to try to find out, find the positive stuff, the glass is half full stuff. And I think you can do that this week with this USC team. But Washington State's dangerous. This is not a team that they can go in taking lightly, and I don't think that will happen considering where USC is right now. They can't afford to take, the rest of the year. They can't afford to take anybody else on this schedule lightly. So that, I would think that also works in USC's favor.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to wrap it up for a Tuesday practice. That's really a Wednesday practice. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Orr. For more, check out uscfootball.com.